Hey, everybody, good morning. Staff meeting Tuesday, December the 16th. Got a few things we're going to cover today. Tom, take it away.
They're on Zoom, right, Nicole? Your people on Zoom?
I believe Brittany.
Two items today, Chairman and Commission, good morning. We're going to go over preliminary results of the community survey today, and just to kind of set the stage for that, Nicole will talk more about it. But in the 2025 budget, we had $45,000 set aside to do a outside consultant, third party type of survey on county services. So this is a report out on that today. It's part of, I'll just also mention that I think the spirit of the commission making the decision back in 2024 for that 2025 budget item was one of transparency and to go forth. We've never done a community survey like this in the county. So, and just to remind you all, we also are working with Dr. Rowe on a budget simulator. You saw the first iteration of that last year. We are progressing again with him for a second version this year, which will be better. So we commit a lot in the county to transparency and to try to involve our public in helping run the government. So that's the spirit of this item. And I want Nicole to kind of kick this off. And then the second item, the commission wanted to update on the election office building. So Tanya will, and Andrew Diltz are here to lead that discussion. So, and the election office is here as well. So go ahead, Nicole.
All right. Good morning, commissioners and staff. Again, Nicole Gibbs of Strategic Communications. I am here with Walker, the company, to bring you results of the 2025 community survey that was conducted in November. To our knowledge, as Tom said, this is the first community survey conducted by Sedgwick County in this magnitude. As a quick reminder, this was approved through the 2025 budget process. It was also an item on the previous strategic plan. The questions were generated in partnership with the Wichita State School of Public Affairs, Hugo Wall, and it was reviewed by leadership team and commissioners. The survey was hosted by Qualtrics and was open November 6th through December 1st. In that, we sent out 15,000 postcards, 75,000 plus emails, 50,000 text messages. We also did opportunities for the greater Sedgwick County to fill out the survey through the website widget, social media posts, commissioner newsletters. We also sent the media opportunities for them to post on their website, and we did have 2 that had individual links. And last but not least, we also distributed to staff, so all staff had the opportunity to take the survey as well. The most important thing to remember that this is a snapshot in time, and it captures a baseline and significant sentiments of what the county residents want to know. Some of the results confirm topics we've been talking about and working on, and other results will shed light on new information. The presentation from Walker is for you to hear the analysis of the results, share your input and feedback, and help guide us in the next steps. I think you'll find the information very interesting, and so I'd like to introduce Brittany with Walker, who'll be presenting this morning. Morning, Brittany.
Good morning. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for your time today. My name is Brittany Bluthart, and I'm the Associate Vice President of Client Services at Walker. Walker is an experience management consulting firm that has partnered with Sedgwick County to improve the resident experience. And today I'll be sharing those key findings from the community engagement survey, including what residents value most, where the county is performing well, where gaps exist, and what residents are asking for moving forward. So this summary focuses on results, interpretation, and recommendations to make sure that to support your decision making. The goal of this survey was to understand residents' priorities and perceptions of county services, including satisfaction, trust, and tax fairness, so leadership can identify strengths, address gaps, and guide future planning and funding decisions. Everything you'll see today ties back to this objective and to the county's broader strategy. The survey was administered online via Qualtrics, which is a software technology for research using multiple outreach methods, as Nicole outlined, including mailers, email, website, and text from November 6th through December 1st. Most responses came from email, and it took around 10 to 15 minutes to complete. All responses were confidential. In total, we received 6,171 completed surveys, providing us with a strong data set across districts and topic areas, including community priorities, services, trust, taxes, and demographics. For surveys and market research, this is considered a strong representative sample for us to pull out insights. The typical respondent is what we would describe as the established neighbor in Sedgwick County. This is generally a longtime resident, often 20 years or more, likely a homeowner, age 45 or older with some level of college education. So this group tends to be middle to upper middle income and really invested in county decisions related to services, safety, and taxes. This context is important because it helps explain why issues like affordability and stability come into play as we review the results today. In addition to the primary respondent persona, the data points also to two other resident profiles that are very represented in the survey and help us explain some of the other themes we're seeing. The first is what we've labeled as the mid-career stabilizer. They're typically between 35 and 54, often employed full-time and earn mid to upper incomes. Many have also lived in the county for a while, but they may have not always been lifelong residents. So this group really anchors us to the local workforce. The second persona that was important to call out are our residents that are 65 and older, often retired, have been living in the county for a while, or are homeowners. And this is important to call out because they are often very involved in voting and can be a strong emotional tie to the community. So what did we hear? These are the three overarching headlines that summarize what residents told us. So keep in mind as we review these results that best-in-class performance is anything above 80% for the top box or the highest scale point that we asked respondents with. In the public sector, high performance is often more challenging, with many organizations seeing scores in the mid-range of 40 to 60%. First, affordability is under pressure, with property taxes emerging as a breaking point for many residents. 82% cite affordability as a top concern, and comments repeatedly reference large year-over-year tax increases and fear of being taxed out of their homes. Second, public safety is the county's strongest win. It is rated as highly important, highly trusted, and relatively high in satisfaction. So residents want this protected and strengthened. And third, trust in human services are the biggest vulnerabilities. Trust is low when it comes to transparency, use of tax dollars and elected officials, and satisfaction with human services and mental health is the lowest of any area. Let's go ahead and dig into these results a little bit deeper. And when we look at what matters most to residents, safety and affordability clearly rise to the top, followed closely by housing costs. When asked to rank reasons for living in Sedgwick County, family and friends come first, followed by affordability and employment. In terms of communication, residents rely heavily on traditional media, particularly local TV and radio, followed by online news and word of mouth. Again, keep in mind the personas that were our respondent base for this survey. Certainly there are other channels that were successful in reaching them. So this definitely has implications for how and where the county communicates in the future. This is our where to focus first view of the information. Rather than looking at satisfaction scores department by department, this chart combines two things at once: how well residents rate each service and how much that service actually influences overall satisfaction with county government. That helps us prioritize, not by opinion, but by data. The chart is divided into 4 quadrants. The top right shows services that are both highly important and performing well. These are strengths to protect, like public safety. The top left is the most critical area to focus on. These services matter a lot to overall satisfaction, but are rated a little bit lower than some of the other departments, meaning improvements here can have the biggest impact on how residents feel overall. The bottom right includes services that are rated well, but may have less influence on their overall satisfaction, while the bottom left represents areas that are lower rated, but lower impact. Important operationally, but not where we'd expect the biggest shift in perception. So overall, this helps us focus attention and resources where they can deliver the best return from a resident perspective. Residents are pragmatic about taxes. A strong majority agree that paying taxes is a civic responsibility, which is great, but fewer than half believe taxes are generally fair. Nearly 70% want limits on property tax growth, and at the same time, residents show a clear preference for sales tax over property tax, particularly when sales tax is paired with property tax relief. The takeaway here is not that residents are anti-tax, but they want fairness, restraint, and clear trade-offs. This view brings together a lot of what we've talked about so far. It is a SWOT analysis, but it's grounded entirely in the resident perceptions and data. And the purpose isn't to label things as good or bad, but to understand where the county is strong, where residents see gaps from their perception, and where action or communication could have the biggest impact. Starting with strengths, public safety and first response clearly stand out. 92% of residents say public safety is very important and they trust the county to deliver it. And overall, they're fairly satisfied with that. So that certainly combines importance, trust, and satisfaction. So this is really a rare asset for the county. Culture, recreation, and public works are also performing well. And overall, county services rated at 58%, which is a fairly fair, solid foundation to build off of, especially when we consider other similar organizations and government groups. On the weaknesses side, we see two clear themes: service satisfaction gaps and governance trust gaps. Zoning and planning, mental health, and human services all have lower satisfaction ratings. This doesn't mean they don't value these services. In many cases, it reflects frustration with access, clarity, and outcomes. The opportunities quadrant shows us where resident openness exists. On revenue, residents are sending us a clear signal. 69% want limits on property tax growth. 66% prefer sales over property tax. So this tells us there's some trade-off based conversations and room to land there. Finally, communication certainly matters, and understanding where they would like to hear from us is important in our decision making. To wrap up our SWOT analysis, the threats highlight where risk is growing potentially. So affordability pressure is more widespread. 82% saying affordability is important. And if these pressures continue, they could potentially impact other service performance that is currently positive. So certainly there's balance here. There's real strengths that residents recognize. At the same time, there are other pressures that are coming to mind for them. These themes come directly as well from open-ended comments. We gave residents a chance to share in their own words what's most important to them. Residents speak very clearly about property taxes, public safety, and infrastructure, and they're very transparent in their commentary. So some of those themes here are supported by some comments. Residents repeatedly describe property taxes as rising faster than incomes and affordability. Residents want core services protected and properly funded. As you can see here, wanting to support those folks that are specifically in public safety as well, paying them better, as this resident said. Human services are being viewed as failing those in need. many residents had emotional commentary about access to care and system capacity. As one resident noted here, people in need often end up in places without the help that they deserve. Several residents expressed frustration with clarity, follow through, and accountability. But despite the critical comments, I do want to acknowledge that they really appreciate the avenue to be asked and to provide their feedback. They appreciate the county reaching out to listen to what they have to say. Now to the recommendations. We've seen what the residents have told us, and now combining that along with best practices in the industry, we have a couple recommendations to address these priorities, close any trust gaps, and respond to concerns in a way that is realistic and actionable. First is treating mental health and human services as a priority service system. So mental health and human services represent the most significant service gap in the data. Satisfaction is lower, trust is lower than core services, and the comments show some frustration and concern about access and outcomes. So the recommendation here is about treating the services as a system, not just programs, and improving the clarity of communication of how residents can get help. I've heard that there's some work here already happening, so just continuing to reinforce what services you have. They're not asking for more, they're just asking for what are they and understanding what could help them the most. Second, residents very clear about what they believe the county does well. Public safety is the strongest area of importance, trust, and satisfaction. Infrastructure also ranking quite high. So this recommendation is about protecting those strengths while addressing any gaps across the communities. Maintaining first response services, communicating staffing and pay priorities, supporting underserved populations, and just providing regular progress updates on those investments. So these are foundational to resident trust, and this will provide a strong platform for addressing these more challenging conversations around taxes and services. The next recommendation is around being transparent and communicating further about where their tax money is going. Trust dropped significantly when residents were asked about the use of tax dollars. So this tells us residents want clear explanations, not just decisions. So a tax and value transparency package or communication or marketing campaign would help residents understand where they're going and how decisions are being made, and just improving the clarity and credibility of the information that they're sharing. Another example could be a plain language budget story or a "you said we did" campaign to show residents that we are listening to their feedback and what improvements or action we're putting into place. And lastly, affordability, and specifically property taxes emerged as one of the strongest and most emotional themes in the comments. Residents understand the need for revenue, but they're just asking for a bit more predictability. So this recommendation is about pairing limits on property tax growth with a fairness lens residents can see and understand. So including or doing items like an assessment, education, targeting areas where there's a little less understanding, or exploring rebalancing strategies. So such as the preference residents have for sales tax over property tax, while communicating trade-offs will be a great way to start to build trust with them in this area. Being transparent. Taken together, these recommendations focus on reinforcing what's already working, fixing what doesn't, and improving how decisions are explained and experienced by residents. That is one of the overarching themes, is communication about what you're doing today that's really well, and also communicating more to them about those services. The next step is to get your feedback on this research. and start to inform what could be some next step actions for the county, as well as to share this feedback more broadly across other departments to build a shared understanding and start to coordinate that action planning. We also recommend establishing an ongoing listening cycle with residents, a pulse survey in 2 years and a full survey every 4 years can be helpful to track progress and emerging needs over time, while also keeping in mind voting cycles and elections. So I want to thank you all for your time today to review these results. The county is in a really great place with some very visible strengths. Just a couple of these areas for improvement can really go a long way for residents. Thank you for your time.
Good. Brittany, thank you for the presentation. We appreciate it and all the work that's gone in. Nicole, your staff as well, all the work that's gone into the survey. Nicole, how do you want to direct this bus right now? Do you want to have a conversation, a question and comment? What are you thinking is most useful right now?
The way we discussed or we would like to do is if there's any questions regarding the actual data that we can include Brittany on, if you have questions on why the chart looks the way it does, what questions were asked, those kinds of things, Brittany can help with that. Otherwise, we're really searching for commissioner dialogue, feedback, initial responses, those type of things to what the survey results meant to you.
Okay, good. Okay. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Commissioner Howe? Go ahead.
Brittany, I'm trying to, the one, this property tax world is challenging to say the least.
Mhm.
Had a comment in there about maybe predictability on
Mhm.
property tax. And I know that Commissioner Bluebon and I went back to, there was a time at the city when there was really a fluctuation of water rates going on. And even at Boeing and the big ones, and every year we do water rates, and we changed and approached it to say, okay, instead of doing 10% one year and 1% the next, we're going to just try to keep a common
Mhm.
rate increase. I just throw that out there, and that I think that calmed a lot of the storm. They still weren't happy with the rate increases as much, but at least they knew, especially businesses, could do predictability. I don't know that how we engage that because we're such under the control of the state, and I guess we could try to do predictability on our levy, 25% of their whole property tax. I don't. Just curious. My mind went to there, and we're trying to lobby the state on some things, but it's a challenge. But this is really good information.
Great. And thank you for your feedback and just commentary there. Certainly predictability can be a challenge. I think if anything, starting with some solid communication about what's going on today can help relieve some of that strain or just perception for residents. But certainly getting closer to predictability can be helpful for
And
that.
if I could just add too, in the property tax world, when there's a county and our government, we're like a year or two behind the true market. So when there's if there's a real crash this year, we don't feel it next year on our property tax. It's the next year's.
Right.
So it's really difficult in these inflationary world. They're still feeling that inflation, even though now CPI and inflation is sitting in a very low rate, but they're not going to feel that for another year or two. So maybe that's just some of the education factor of it.
Yeah, even educating on that simple point, right, with the timing, and that they may not expect to feel that now, but it was from a few years ago. Yeah.
Mr. Woodlaw?
Thank you. I think you hit the head on the nail here, where you said strong sentiment and comments about large year-over-year property tax increases. They don't know what it is. Was it the assessment? Was it something, one of the other taxing entities on that bill? They really don't know what it is. They just know that bulk sum was larger than it was the year before and the year before that. And I think, if we've seen these increases over 5 or 6 years, where they may not know what the root cause is, they just know it's higher and it's adding to that unaffordability.
Sure.
So I do appreciate you capturing those comments and summarizing it in that statement.
course.
Good. Yeah, very good. Commissioner Howard?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know where to begin, but I think the survey basically confirms what many of us had already suspected would probably be top of the list. Let me just state, I think my takeaway here is that property taxes is the thing we need to focus on. And one of the very first things you said, I don't know that there's any more data in here about this, but you did mention at the very beginning here that the opinion of elected officials is pretty low. Or was that in there?
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
discuss that near the beginning.
You wonder why that is. And again, I'll just say this, we need to hear from the people. We need to make policy based on what we hear from people. And I think those are the takeaways here is that when it comes to property taxes, we need to hear them and we need to actually get off the fence and do something. I think that's our biggest challenge. We've been talking about sales taxes and property taxes for a very, very long time. And I think because of inaction on our part, we now have, and again, it's totally fine. I'm trying to stay as neutral publicly as possible on the Wichita sales tax. It's not my issue. But one of the sales points that they're making is it is property tax relief. And I'll just tell you, I just sent you guys out a couple of pages here. You guys can look at the numbers here. But the $150 million they're earmarking towards property tax relief, that's, if you divide it evenly by 7, it's $21,428,000 per year. And you look at their mill levy, that one sheet there on the third column from the right, the bottom row says Wichita 1 mil is equal to $5.42942 million per mil. That calculates out to 3.946 mils reduction if everything works perfectly. So just a hair under 4 mils. And then one of the sales points they have is this is property tax relief. And of course, if you just see Dion Leffler's article this morning, I haven't really got a chance to process everything he said there, but it's not that simple. And I'll just say it that way. It's more complicated than that. One other thing, I will disagree with Dion on, and I don't know if this is something that we can talk about here, but we talk about the pull factor. The basis for all this analysis, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, it goes back to this issue of pull factor. I was talking to the chairman this morning. The Sedgwick County Zoo says their pull factor is about 30%. And I believe for the zoo, that is probably correct. They know where visitors come from and they keep track of stuff. And I think it's a fair thing to say about the Sedgwick County Zoo. The Kansas Department of Revenue, though, on their tables, it talks about the county's pull factor as a whole, as well as every city in Sedgwick County. And Wichita's pull factor is at 10%, according to the state. The last report they have is 10%, not 30%. Dion got some numbers from Kelly, and I don't know exactly how that was calculated, but he says it's 22%. And I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but according to the state, it's 10%. So that's a pretty big difference in numbers, 22 versus 10. I don't know what's right. According to the state, we're at 13%. And again, the county has a pull factor of 13. The proposal I've been talking about for a while, again, we're not moving forward yet because we have not agreed as a commission to do so. But I've talked about a 0.25% sales tax. That's 25 cents on $100 of retail spending. It would create, if you will, if you on the one sheet, you can see the last year's 1% sales tax countywide, the very bottom row, towards the middle, it says it collected $141,582,138. So if that's 1%, then 1/4 of that would be equivalent to $35,395,534. Divide that by our mill levy, which is top row, third column from the right, $7.546657 per mill. That equates to 4.69 mils of property tax relief, potentially. And the difference is, again, I'll just say, I know that I've worked with council here a little bit to kind of develop a resolution that kind of would help us move forward. And we've had conversations about this in the past, and for some reason, we're not having the discussion, I think, to make the next step. I'm asking my colleagues to just get off the fence, let's do something. If we're going to go forward at all, the caveats, in my opinion, are this. And I guess this is a bit of a change. And I apologize to Kirk already because I think that he deserves it. I think to make this simple, that rather than adding anything to the budget whatsoever, I would say move discretionary items to the sales tax fund that potentially would be a new sales tax. I would want a sales tax advisory board that determines the recommendations on how that money should be used. I would put Interest Bank Arena and Sedgwick County Zoo at the top of that list because they are voter approved. And there's no choice really not to fund them. And I would put the caveat, if there's not sales tax funds to take care of those two things, we still have to go back to property tax. But they get the first dollars that are generated. And the rest of the dollars will go to a discretionary fund. And that fund would go from year to year. They could spend it or they could save it up. They could spend it, on one project down the road as they saved up money. It would be voter approved. It would be a sunset, and it would be 100% property tax relief. And so I'll just argue, Interest Bank Arena, as we mentioned the other day, a meeting about a month ago, it is now a property tax problem. If we don't have a plan, it's going to be the same source of funding that everything else we do is, which is property tax and our current sales tax, which is simply just dumped into the same pot of money. So it's all mingled. I had a resolution that said we would make a distinction that sales tax funds does discretionary things and property tax funds don't. That has not gone anywhere either. We're still sitting on that fence. My opinion is I would leave the old sales tax alone. This is a new sales tax proposal. It is not a new tax in so much that it's replacing a property tax. And if you didn't see that through this survey over and over and over again, I appreciate the presentation today. That's what people want. They want a real property tax reduction based on a sales tax increase modestly. And again, if you get too out of balance, if the sales tax gets too high, behavior changes. I think you have a lot of detrimental things to the economy, but 0.25% sales tax is such a small number. I don't think it has a detrimental impact on people's spending habits necessarily. And again, I would say one other caveat is Wichita's moves forward. If they put some on the ballot, that's fine. If it's voter approved, that's fine. I would want to, at that point, probably stop. So my hope would be that our initiative would only move forward until those two things happen. If theirs moves forward and it's approved, then we would simply write it in the legislation that ours would be suspended at that point. But until that happens, I think we need to lean forward. We need to ask the legislature for legislative approval to give us a sales tax that's voter approved with a sunset. And it would be based on the fact that theirs does not adopted by the voters. And it would be completely earmarked to discretionary spending in our budget, with the Sedgwick County Zoo and Interest Bank Arena being the priorities of that fund. And to me, and I would put this on the November ballot. I think people don't like the March ballot for lots of reasons. I put this on the November ballot for the highest voter turnout possible. I think that's what people would like to have this option. And I think we need to come together and agree to pursue the legislative agreement approval to do that. And again, it would be the caveat that for some reason the city's proposal is not supported by the voters or whatever. If that was to happen, gives us an option. Let's see here. I don't know what else to say here. I think it's time for us to make a decision at some point. Our next meeting is not till January the 7th. The legislature starts right after that. The Monday after that, the legislature is in business. And this is supposed to be a 75-day session, roughly. If we're going to be successful, there will be a sales tax bill. There's always a sales tax bill. They tend to bundle those together. Ours is a bit more complicated because it requires us to not use the distribution formula. That's a caveat that has to happen. And because of that, and I guess I have two other questions. This may be for Justin. Is there a requirement that we do these sales tax questions on gubernatorial or general election ballots versus cities that can do it? It seems like anytime. I know they're limited to spring election now, but being March now, that's a new thing. But cities, I think, can do it virtually any year, and they can pick any one of the three elections. Do counties have a restriction as to what year we can do it and which election it falls on?
Off the top of my head, Commissioner Howell, I can't recall that there's a limitation on that. I'll look into it further and get back in touch with you.
I was under the impression it may be a gubernatorial general. And if that's the case, that would be this next November. And maybe I'm wrong. But again, I'm fine with the gubernatorial general. I think that's a good plan because that's the highest turnout besides a presidential election. And the second thing I'd say is, are we limited to a percent? Again, I'm talking about a 0.25%. There is something in the state law that limits us to increments of something. What is that increment again?
It's a 0.25% increments. So I know that you had discussed publicly before, and I think it may have even been on last year's legislative platform. I can't remember if it's on this year. It is on this year's. Thank you. About maybe lowering that down to a 1/8 of a percent.
There was an idea that we would have potentially a sales tax that would address something specific in our budget needs. But to me, that would be, again, I don't want to do a 1/4% sales tax for something like stormwater. It was just, in my opinion, it's too much money. So if you could do a 20th of a percent, for example, that would generate enough money potentially to really bolster a stormwater management program potentially. But we don't have those options because the state pushes us into this round number. But for Sedgwick County, it's a very large number of dollars. So one other thing I'd say is on one of the pages talks about one of the last pages of the presentation. It talks about the transparency, tax and value transparency package. Let me just reiterate once again, the idea of splitting the tax bills and putting a flyer with the tax bill to let them know what their dollars are doing goes a long ways towards the tax and transparency initiative. So again, I love the survey. On that last page there, treatment, mental health, and human services, we're already doing a lot. If they're asking us to increase, that's a tax increase. Or they're saying they just like what we're doing currently, that's great. The rest of this is basically hold the line, do what you're doing now, improve the taxpayer awareness, that's education, and then find a way to rebalance. I like that word. The very last word on the last page or that last section there says rebalancing. That's what this would be, is rebalancing. And again, idea of just a very small increase on property tax or sales taxes to lower property taxes is in fact rebalancing. That's what the people apparently want. They have spoken loud and clear. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Brittany, I'm coming to you with a couple questions real quick, and Nicole as well. I've got a couple thoughts real quick, though. Obviously, the county, we've been talking about the sales tax conversation for a couple of years, at least since I've been on the commission. So there's some interest at the county that some of us believe need to be paid via sales tax and not property taxes. Most of that cultural attractions, community development stuff. So this is not a foreign conversation that we've had here at the county. Conversation is, do we do it with internal sales tax dollars or incremental sales tax dollars and taking it to a ballot? Commissioner Howell and I, we've talked on a number of occasions on these things. We do not have a formal plan. And I think what Commissioner Howell is asking us to entertain is a formal discussion. I'm happy to do that and think that you and I, particularly, I'd like to work with you on that for January. There's a couple thoughts here. Number one, what I do not want is confusion with what's going on in the city of Wichita, because conversations were had and the media picked up on the city and the county are now competing sales tax plans. And I'm getting messages about, oh, now we're entertaining 1.25% sales tax. And that was not what was happening. So I just don't want any confusion. And Commissioner Howell has been very clear that we would just have to go through the process because we have a different process at the county than what the city does. We actually have to go get permission from the state legislature and we have to work ahead. And that if the city of Wichita sales tax went through, that I would not pursue a countywide sales tax of 1/4 cent. So I'm happy to work with Commissioner Howell on that conversation and preparing what that looks like to go to the legislature, just to get things prepped in case we do want to go that route. Because I do think the community wants to fund the zoo and Interest Bank Arena and other cultural attractions here. And I think they do largely agree with us that should be sales tax funded and not property tax funded. So I just please hear me clearly to the public. I want no confusion. There is not a competing sales tax plan with the city of Wichita. We're not going on the ballot and competing, choose ours versus theirs or anything like that. That is not what's happening here. And I just don't want the public or the media to think that's what's happening.
Chairman, I completely agree. I would just say, though, I don't think it's wrong for the public to be aware of this discussion.
Sure.
If the public wants to vote yes or no on the city's proposal, in the back of their mind, they might say, I would prefer a county's proposal. I'm not saying that that's what they should do. I don't think it's fair to the public to be aware of only one and not be aware of the other. And I don't want these to compete. I want theirs to be front and center as it is. And should theirs fail for whatever reason, the public has, if you will, a different option that's queued up. I would just ask the manager or whoever needs to answer this question. What are the steps to move forward? Because we're stagnant, we're stuck, we're stalled. If we want to move forward, what do we have to do? Do we need a resolution that's approved by this commission? And do we want to bring it forward for a public vote? Do we want to get our CAB boards involved? Or what do we have to do to move forward?
I think when we talked to commission a couple, 3 weeks ago, that the concept would be, regardless of what happens with city sales tax, that we would position this commission legislatively that if the commission chose to, we could run a sales tax in November. I think that unless there's some other order given, that's where Justin and I are headed, is to prepare us for that by resolution and through discussion with the legislature. And then the commission has to make a decision after that whether to pursue or not. So.
Right.
I guess the final comment I'd like to make is this is the proposal I'm talking about here is 100% property tax relief. It's everything it's things in the budget currently and nothing new. So again, I know I've waffled on that a little bit in the past, trying to think of ways to maybe get some buy-in, but I don't think we need it. I think this survey, my opinion, convinces me. What I like to do is see us offset what we're currently spending out of property tax funds for services that are discretionary. And again, the way I presented this, just to be really clear, the zoo and Interest Bank Arena are going to get what they need to operate, and the remaining funds will grow over time. And there may be periods of recession, so that fund will increase and decrease as spending happens. My intent would be that those folks that have discretion funding source. They would have to, if you will, enjoy the surplus or tighten their belt as the economy changes up and down. So it gives, rather than putting that burden on the backs of property taxpayers, I think the sales tax it generates what it generates, and we can spend it however we think is best. But I don't really think that we go into a recession, we need to increase taxes to cover a shortfall that happens amongst the people who receive those funds. I think that what I'm implying is there will be times that they will get more money perhaps and see growth. There's going to be times where that growth will not be available. It's all dependent on the economy. So those things, rather than currently as we fund them through property taxes, they just got what they got last year, or maybe a slight increase. I'd like to change that relationship. They need to understand there's more revenue to be spread amongst them. They may get increases. Today they're stagnant, perhaps. Also, others that see increases through property tax increases, that would be dependent on the economy growing. And one other thing I'd say this right now, the Sedgwick County Zoo, they get funding whether they get 700,000 visitors or 300,000 visitors. The funding for us to them is exactly the same, because we have responsibility to take care of the buildings and the animals and the staff. So that's a fixed cost to us. But by doing this through a sales tax, I think there's a really cool incentive that says we're marketing Wichita with the idea that we want to increase visitors and spending in the community, because that's where the source of funding comes from. There's actually a very good incentive for those that receive sales tax funds to actually, if you will, encourage the economy forward, rather than sitting back and resting on property tax dollars. Now they're in the game by pushing economic growth, if that makes any sense. So I think it's a better incentive system. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Commissioner. Okay. Brittany, I've got a couple questions. 6,200 completed surveys roughly. Somewhat familiarity with polling and surveys and things of that sort. The methodology, 6,200, that's a pretty healthy survey. Could you speak to that at all? I may be asking an unfair question that may not be your bandwidth, but the methodology and the integrity of the data with 6,200, it seems to be a pretty intense survey.
Yeah, you have a very strong representative sample of respondents that you got. I think it's a testament to all the communications and planning and marketing that went into collecting data. There were precautions put into place with the survey as well to verify and make sure that respondents were doing multiple respondents or survey responses. And so this is a very healthy sample size, truly due down to the communication of the survey out and how effective that was.
Yeah, the data go ahead, Nicole.
I was just going to ask, Brittany, didn't you say there was a number of survey and responses that started to become statistically valid and continue to be able to make scientific decisions? Can you review that, please?
Yeah. Yep. So in statistical analysis, market research, there's a kind of like general magic number or rule of thumb. It's around like 365 or so, around 400 responses gives you about like a plus or minus 5% margin of error. And so around 95% confidence in the use of that for research and pulling out insights. So Certainly we are past that and makes it better for us to get out good, strong insights.
What,
Yeah.
what about, I mean, this is the first time we've done something like this to this level in my 3 years here.
Mhm.
When I talk about government trust gaps, transparency, do we have any baseline historical data that we can compare to see if, 'cause I think that we've made a lot of effort here to be transparent, though, particularly the last, I truly believe that's been in the DNA of Sedgwick County for some time, but I know we talk about that a lot here. Transparency, making sure that we are taking things to the public in our systems and some of the budget simulator stuff we're working through. So I'm just curious, is this a trend line that's improving here? Do we have any baseline data to compare to? Or I'd love to know how the commissioner, if we've improved in that regard, but that's not the most important piece. The transparency piece, I think, is the most important piece. Any idea?
To my
Good question.
knowledge, and
Go ahead.
sorry, Brittany, I'll let you answer too, but to my knowledge here at the county, this is our baseline. We don't have any historical formal surveys that have been done in our knowledge. And so this is a place for us to start and go off of.
Good answer. Brittany, you agree?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I don't believe you've run a study like this before. And that's why one of our other recommendations is to, do a pulse check and temperature check again on residents in a few years. So you can get that trend line and see how things that you're putting out there are improving or changing the resident satisfaction.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's last comment. I just think that many times, well, I think one of the things that we're all trying individually and collectively is just the awareness and the education piece. When people don't understand how things work, it discourages them. I think that adds to a level of frustration many times and even transparency issues. And as Commissioner Meinzer mentioned earlier, that, the part that we do at Sedgwick County is about 20 to 25% of the property tax calculation. And a lot of people just don't understand those things and how does a mill levy work and things of that sort. So I think the awareness and the education piece helps to alleviate frustration. And I think that should be a part of the conversation under the umbrella of transparency. That's a part of the transparency that will bring encouragement and confidence for people. So, okay. Any other questions for Brittany? It was a really good effort here. A big survey. Thank you so much. This is well done.
Of course. Thank you all for your time and attention today. And I hope you have a great rest of your week and a happy holiday season.
You as well. Thanks, Brittany.
Thank
Nicole,
you.
good job. Very well done. Good job to your staff. Okay, Tom, next up.
You want the podium or, okay. Talk about the election office and give the commission an update on that project.
Okay. Hey, Andrew.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Andrew Dilts, your Director of Facilities, here to present a CIP on elections and records management remodel. So a brief history here. We had a CIP amendment approved for just over 5.8 million. We purchased a building the middle of last year for about 4.5 million. Since then, we've been working with an architect and engineer to design a remodel that would work for records as well as elections and emergency management. Our construction documents were published in October for bidding, and that was for us to acquire a general contractor. And phase one, in those construction documents, we had phase one with a completion date of April 27th, 2026. Phase one includes basically the offices to allow staff to occupy that building sooner than later. And then phase two would be complete July 1st this summer. And that's basically the warehouse that would house all the equipment and the exterior of the site plan of the building. We had general contractor bids come in. The bid opening was on December 2nd. Our low bid was Vokes Construction Company. They're out of Newton. Their price was $894,000. We did have an alternate for $30,000 that would remove and replace the base, cove base or toe base, and the flooring in offices. It also removed a wall to combine two offices into one. Here are the phases. Phase one is the lower portion. That's basically all the offices.
And Andrew, can I interrupt real quick?
Yes.
That contractor bid from Votes, has that been approved by us?
It has not yet. It will come before you tomorrow.
Hey, Andrew, real quick, what was the $894,000? What was the original estimate that we had for construction there? Do you recall?
Well,
It was 1.3-ish million.
We have about 1.3 in our budget. That's to cover our low bid for construction. That's to cover any IT work, computers, furniture that needs to be moved. We have movers on top of that. There's a potential we're going to have to purchase some more furniture.
That's helpful clarity. So 894 is the construction, but the 1.3 budget, there's an allowance there because there's other expenses.
That is correct.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So phase one is the bottom portion of the slide here in front of you, and then phase two would be the warehouse, which is the top portion, as well as the exterior. Looking at the floor plan, so this would be phase one. The top right quadrant, if you will, is basically going to be shared space between records and emergency management, as well as the data center for this location. We do have basically just 2 cubicles in this space side by side between records and emergency management. And then the rest of the space will be records for the storage. To the bottom right hand corner, that is going to be the office space for elections. We do have a couple walls that we're demoing out there, and the entrance there to the very bottom of the page, we're doing a little bit of construction there to kind of open it up and make a little lobby space for elections. And then the left side, we'll have on the left bottom corner, we'll have the public facing portion of the building, which will be where people can come and vote. We'll also have a conference room for county staff, as well as a training room for elections. And then the top left quadrant is basically the equipment where the ballots are going to be counted and where equipment will be staged for elections.
Andrew, where's the public parking at? I know we've driven in there before. Is that on the left or down at the bottom?
It will be at the very bottom. So the public entrances are going to be on the very bottom here, and there will be some parking out there. And then there's overflow parking that would be to the right of these offices.
So the staff will walk in the entrance on the lower right. The public will come in on the lower left.
So this entrance right here is basically your Monday through Friday 8 to 5 entrance for staff, as well as potential candidates that are running for office. If you're running for the mayor of Cheney or something, you'd be coming through those doors. For public voting, they would use this entrance, and they would be limited to this room right here. We are cutting in some windows in this wall, so there will be a public view to where the ballot tabulator is and where they're counting the votes. So the press can set up there. You'll have a public option there, but the public will basically be bound to this wall. We are building a couple restrooms here, male and female, ADA accessible restrooms here, and a small break room here for volunteers that are working out here that can access that area.
That's good.
I was only asking because I just remember years past, Scott Schwab was really concerned about the security overall. Security, I'll just use that as a big word.
Yes. And I think a significant portion of our remodel is going to that. Basically, all of these doors that have an AC next to them have access control. So we will have a common hallway here between records, emergency management, and election staff. But every door off of this hallway that goes into elections or into records has badge access control. We also have cameras located all the way around the exterior of the building and on the interior of the building to monitor staff as well as public on the inside. Now, one thing that we wanted to do when we bought this building was try to reuse the existing surveillance equipment that was out there. What we found was if we were to do that, we'd have basically our own software for that, and it wouldn't be there wouldn't be uniformity with all the other surveillance systems that we have. And so we can't reuse those cameras, so we're having to purchase new cameras for this building.
But there's also access control within the election space that's not shared between records management and.
Correct. Yes. So that common hallway, it's badge access all the way through, basically, with the exception of getting into the restrooms or a break room. There's access control. So election staff could come in through a rear entry they would have to badge in once, and then they would have to badge in again to get into their actual space. So there's no overlap between the departments with the exception of the restrooms and break room.
Okay, that's helpful. I would acknowledge Rick, Brad, and Christian are here. If we have any questions for elections leadership, our election commissioner, Laura Rainwater, she was asked to be at the City of Wichita today during their meeting in case there's questions about the special election. She's actually at City Hall right now, Wichita City Hall. But we have some experts that are here and understand these operations well. So if we have any questions specifically, I know these three are here. And thank you for coming, provide some clarity. So, Andrew, continue.
So this slide basically shows the elections warehouse. This is to give you an indication of the footprint. There's only electrical work happening in here, but it's pretty significant. So the next slide gets a little messy. Here is the electrical work that's happening in this location. So we are adding circuits all the way around the perimeter so they can charge equipment on the perimeter. And then we have a bus duct that will be installed here. That's the long bar here. And that is going to allow, if you can kind of see the pigtails that come off of it, that bus duct is something that is going to be up high. So it's not going to be in the way of the elections equipment when they're trying to move all these machines in or out. They would charge the rows of equipment off of those bus ducts. And the beauty about this design is in the next 10, 20 years is if this equipment changes and their needs change, this bus duct allows these pigtails to move. So it gives us some flexibility there. So this infrastructure, while we put it in now, should be something that lasts and is adaptable for future needs for a long period of time. Here is the site plan or the exterior. So the offices are here. This was phase one. Phase two is the warehouse here. We are fencing in the parking lot. We'll tie into the other two outbuildings that are out here that emergency management is currently using. And then the fence will continue here and come down. We do have a manual gate here. We have an electric gate here. This will allow the elections trucks to come in and basically have a circulation of an entry and an exit and not trying to go in and out the same gate. There is badge access out here. And we do have cameras on the building facing or overseeing this parking lot. Alternate one, to kind of explain what that $30,000 alternate was for. This light shaded green is the flooring that will be replaced by that alternate. There's also a wall here that will get removed, combining these two offices into one. And then we also have, I forgot to mention this earlier, we are also remodeling the women's restroom and putting in a mother's room there. So, and then this item will come before you tomorrow as part of bid board for approval, and I will stand for any questions.
Okay. Thank you for this. And hey, commissioners, any questions or comments?
Andrew, quick question. What back to the first line? What's the second bullet at the bottom? The 30,000 alternate, what's that mean?
So that is to replace carpet in the majority of the offices. It will also remove a wall that's to combine two offices into one.
No, I thought maybe there was another bid that came in that was an alternate bid.
We did have other bids that come in, but this is our lowest and best.
Is there any part of the building here that's not being utilized or any part of the property that's not being utilized?
There's really not. There is one of the outbuildings is open for potential need for future departments. Right now, we are utilizing it to store furniture and equipment for other buildings, but it's not something that we couldn't move out and allow another department to make use of.
And then do we have a breakdown of the 894,000, like, well, not a complete level of detail, but just little bit better ideas?
We don't at this point. Our bid documents just basically require them to submit a lump sum bid, but it is something that we would like to work with the low bidder and kind of get an idea of how they come up with that price and itemize it. I'd like to see with the electrical portion of this and how much that's costing us with the access control and the surveillance.
Do we have a bid summary that you can send to us? See what's out there for this, just trying to understand the scope of work.
Yes, yeah, we can provide that to you.
Commissioner, the only other thing I might mention is we could reach out to the architects and see if they could give them an estimate, by trades or whatever, or what they think, breakdown.
I'm just trying to understand the lighting, we've already talked about the carpet, is it paint, is it, you said they're moving a wall, just trying to get a better idea as to what the work is.
I think a significant portion of it is in the electrical in that warehouse. To add all those circuits, they're going to have to add
Like this portion of it, 25% of it, whatever's electrical or whatever.
Yep. Yes. So we can provide that for you.
Question, there's been ongoing conversation with Secretary of State and Laura trying to understand, okay, who's accessing this building, multiple county departments. Can you just speak to that so that we can publicize exactly, okay, what is the thought process here between who's going to be in this building, how many people will be in the building, what is the shared spaces, how is the access and all of that control? Can you give some insight?
Certainly. So there's 3 departments that will have access to this building. That's going to be elections, records management, and emergency management. Records and emergency management, the staff that are going to be there, we're basically talking about one person from each department. So at most, you might have 2 people there at the same time. The only access they have is limited to the restrooms, the break room, and their specific area. So emergency management and records cannot have access to anything within the election space. And that is all protected by access control.
Questions? I know, Rick, I don't know if you want to, anybody wants to say anything or add comment, Brad, Christian, anybody?
I guess what I would say. This is quick. Brad Beats, Chief Deputy Election Commissioner. We appreciate you supporting us with this building. And I would say this building does check the marks of what we need.
Okay.
It gives us, I know the big chunk there is the electrical for the warehouse. It will double our warehouse space. I know a couple of you got a chance to see how cozy things were and our abilities to big elections, presidential, gubernatorial, to be able to work on our machines with over 1,400 of them to do LNA and properly have them ready to go, charged and ready to deploy. So those are the kind of things that we're looking forward to, is just having elbow room. I know we've talked a little bit about the accessibility between the 2 entities. I think that the county has done a very good job of trying to address those the best way possible, given the space. And so we're just very excited for the opportunity to move and to have all of us under one roof. And that's the big thing.
Okay, that's helpful. Appreciate that.
Can I ask, so I see where the controlled access in the hallways from there's some shared space with other departments, record keeping or whoever. So, but that's all.
I mean, I think, again, the county's done a very good job of trying to say, okay, you guys have your space and it's going to be secure enough that we feel comfortable with that. And it's something that the state can feel comfortable with that as well. The shared spaces, we'll be able to work with that. And so I think of them, but we need that for the integrity of what we do with elections and to keeping things secure.
Well, and that you bring up a point that I just thought, so is Secretary Schwab had visibility to this, or is he or his group?
He's aware. He's not seeing the facility or anything, but he's aware of where we're going and the direction we're going. So again, I think that we're, with what we have, we're able to make things work well.
Okay, very good. Appreciate you guys being here. Andrew, thank you for this update. There was a conversation just last week about what happens at historic courthouse when we begin to move out. So I'm actually really encouraged to continue that conversation about who all is still over there and what we might be able to make adjustments with in the future. So,
Commissioners, can I just share, we are on a timeline on this, and I had mentioned that Friday. just because of trying to get them in by the April and July.
Yeah, yeah.
I also want to be aware that you want some information, so we will try to get this to you just as quickly as we can, hopefully by today. Andrea, can I ask, is there any, if we don't get the information to them, I mean, can we push this off any further? Is that put us in a bad position for timeline?
Yes, we're ready to get.
Okay, okay. So we will work just as hard as we can to get you the information.
Good with that. I appreciate that.
But and let me make sure I'm understanding. So we took the low bid. What commissioners are asking for now is the breakdown of that bid. It's going to be all of the above of what Commissioner Blueball was talking. He wants to know percentages best we can. That's what we owe the commission
Correct.
before the vote.
Yeah, I'm
tomorrow.
going to try and get that from our design team.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. Appreciate that. Okay, good work, everybody. Other questions or comments? Tom, anything else we got to do today? Okay, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Last meeting of the year.